Hi, I'm Christiana Gaudet. I'm here with more answers to your questions about tarot. Today's question comes from Reese in the UK. Reese writes, I've just begun my amazing journey of discovering tarot and have decided I'd like to pick up my first deck. I spent quite a bit of time shopping around trying to find the one that jumped out at me until I came across The Wild Unknown by Kim Krans. The excitement I felt told me immediately that this was the deck for me. However, on closer inspection of the cards, I've noticed that it seems to be a weird mashup of the Waite deck and the Marseille deck, in that some cards show an almost identical depiction of the Waite deck, like the Ten of Swords, while others seem to follow the Marseille tradition. The Two of Wands is just an illustration of two wands. I feel like this is one of those decks that is almost a tradition in itself. And Reese is referring back to a video I did a couple of weeks ago about how some tarot decks really are their own thing, their own system, their own tradition. So Reese goes on. The question I have about this deck is, how difficult would it be for me to pick up another deck after starting with this one? I definitely favor the RWS tradition and will most likely pick up decks of that tradition, and just wondering what you thought of this issue and the deck in general. Reese, thanks for a great question. You know, it's a little bit of synchronicity too, and I gotta tell you, I have noticed that since I started doing this answers to your questions about tarot, the questions coming in very often are in sync with something I've already been looking at. And this was true in this situation as well. I do not yet own a copy of Wild Unknown, and it wasn't even on my shopping list, although it was certainly on my radar. Doing some research on the deck so I could properly answer this question, well, Reese, thanks a lot. Now I have to buy another tarot deck. What an interesting deck Wild Unknown is. And if you haven't seen it, I did get permission to show you some images, so take a look at some of the images from Wild Unknown Tarot. So clearly this is not a Waite deck. We do see some Waite symbols. We see some tips of the hat to Waite. But clearly, as Reese said, this deck is its own thing. But this deck really uses images from the natural world, images from nature. It's not pictures of people doing things. And in that, it seems more like Animal-Wise Tarot or Animals Divine Tarot or something like that. But I agree with what you say, Reese, in that it really is its own thing, although we can see how it's been influenced, especially by Waite and Marseille. So what do I think of this as a tarot deck? Well, as I said, I simply have to have it. It impresses me for a few reasons. First of all, it had been on my radar because even though it's very different from a traditional deck, this is a very well-loved deck, especially by many professional tarot readers that I know and respect, and many readers who tend to be more toward the Waite tradition. Now, Reese, you had said that you would maybe see yourself as a Waite reader later on. And I think what I see in the community at large is that a lot of people who read with the Waite deck also read with Wild Unknowns, so that should give you a little bit of confidence. I also think it's interesting that so many professional readers choose Wild Unknown. And I think I have an idea why that may be. One of the things you might notice about the deck is that it uses a lot of black and white and then sort of splashes of color, very strategically placed. I believe that the black and the white and the splashes of color will stimulate the brow chakra. This is a deck that I think will really stimulate your own psychic ability, will make you more intuitive during the course of a reading. I think that's part of how tarot works. It interacts with the brow chakra, the third eye, which is responsible for our eyesight, our psychic vision, and our imagination. And so if that area can be stimulated, you can see how all of those things are important in the course of doing a tarot reading. Now, I've also noticed that the art of Wild Unknown is making its way throughout the world. There are a lot of Wild Unknown tattoos and t-shirts, and these symbols, although these are not what we think of as traditional tarot symbols, they are becoming so. 20 years from now, people are going to look at these images and say, these are also traditional tarot images. Now, the question you asked was specific. You asked if I thought you would have a hard time transitioning from Wild Unknown to Wait. And the answer is, in a way, yes. And here's the comparison. If I start reading with a Wait deck and I learn the Wait symbols, I could go to Robin Wood or Hanson Roberts and not even skip a beat because the images are so much the same. When you see the Nine of Cups in one and you see the Nine of Cups in another, even if the colors are different or the art style is different, the image is enough the same that you just know it. This will not be true going from Wild Unknown to any other deck. It will not be true going from Wild Unknown to Wait. Now, I would argue that while you're studying Wild Unknown, it would make sense to study the Wait images as well. So you can kind of make the comparison. You can see the tip of the hat. You can see how the symbols evolve and how the different symbols might be included. That will help you in your understanding of the tarot archetypes as a whole. When you make a switch to a Wait deck or a Wait-based deck, you will have to study a little. But I don't think that's going to be a problem. I would also comment, Reese, that you have put a lot of time and energy into selecting your first deck. If this is the way you're going to go about your tarot studies and your tarot practice over time, I don't think you have much to worry about. I think that the amount of study and research and focus that you're putting into this will pretty much guarantee a great outcome no matter what decks you choose to use. I want to thank you so much for a great question. And if you have a question about tarot, please email me.